Welcome to Iron and Ceremony, Librarius Omnis, where we explore the depths of the Black Library.
And welcome back. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our last episode of Librarius Omnis Mechanicum. As we come into the final part now, really wrapping up the loose ends. If this is your first video where you're following along on our Black Library Horus Heresy read along, or at least discussion and analysis, then I recommend you go back and listen to the other parts that we've done so far on Mechanicum, as this really is the concluding part. We've got, I think it's 3, maybe 4 chapters left to go. I think it might be 3. And we're just wrapping up really the last exploits of Dahlia, the fate of the Magna City, as well as the machinations of the Dark Mechanicum, and a little bit more about the Astartes' role in the Schism of Mars, as limited as it has been. We get a little bit more of that anyway. But ultimately, this is the concluding part of Mechanicum. So as I said, if you haven't watched or listened to any of this yet, I'd recommend you go back and have a listen to that. Otherwise, we will dive straight in to where we left off, which I believe is 3.04, or is it 5 we're on now?
4, yep.
4, it is 4.
Right. Yeah.
Marvellous.
I hope so. We might repeat ourselves otherwise, but
No.
hey, who doesn't? We've done it a few times. Let's do it another time.
Yeah. This one is this a 9-parter now, or is it an 8-parter?
For us, this will be 7, I think.
7. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
It may be one of the longest ones.
I'm looking at Thousand Suns. I'm thinking that might be a long one. A 10-part. Like, it's a thick old book.
The trouble is when it comes to all of these, I always underestimate, and I'm like, we'll do that in 3 parts.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, we get into it, and it's like, no, actually, this is hours and hours of content. Like the next book, which is one of the short ones, because it's a section of short stories. We're going to have to do one for each short story. So actually, that's going to be like probably 5 hours worth of content plus. So
I don't know. I feel like there's 7 stories,
maybe more.
And I know what we're like. If it's not 7 hours minimum, I'll be surprised.
So you've got that to look forward to.
Yeah,
that was a bit of a tangent. Let's get stuck into the to the finale of Mechanicum. Yeah,
cool. So we'll dive straight into it at chapter 3.4. So we will join Sigismund of the Imperial Fists. He is with the fabricator locum Cain at his forge, and they're watching all the containers being loaded and sent up in these gigantic towers that Cain has, like loading bays, shooting straight up to the orbiting crafts, getting ready to basically evacuate all the equipment. But it's not going fast enough for him. Cain previously had told Zeph and the other adepts that no one was attacking him yet, but unfortunately his privileged status is now coming to an end, as he's looking down at a host of infantry, armor, Scutari, and at least 2 legios of engines heading his way. The mission to Mars hadn't gone to plan at all, and Sigismund was quietly raging to himself. The other captain of the Imperial Fist, Camadiaz, is now trapped at Mondus Gamma, fighting for his life, and the troops sent to break the siege at Maximal's Forge are now being turned back time after time by the horrifying creatures that the Dark Mechanicum have created. Sigismund is actually offended that these brainless machines are able to spill the blood of Astartes. And the only consolation that he can find is that when he'd arrived, he'd found Cain ready and waiting to evacuate, and that Cain still held true to the Emperor. Luckily, the Imperial Fists are a well-organised unit, and working with Cain, they had secured a good deal that Sigismund knew they would leave much more behind than they could rescue. So far, they'd taken 12,000 suits of Mark IV armour and double the amount of weapons. And Sigismund told Cain that they need to move faster, but Cain says, we're going as fast as we can. And Sigismund, in true Astartes fashion, says it needs to be faster. And Cain warns him about the impending attack, and takes in a data inload, and shocked to see that there are now 60 engines walking towards him, and that's with not counting the rest of the enemy force. And these are the warriors belonging to Urtzi Marvelos, who is one of Kelber Howe's friends, one of the Forge Masters of Mars. And he asks if Sigismund can repel the attack, because obviously he's not going to last long on his own. And Sigismund says, as much as he would like to make these traitors pay, that's not the mission that I've been tasked with. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use my men to evacuate the stuff, and not some futile act of defiance, which upsets Cain because he can't believe that the Astartes came to rescue him and now just going to take the stuff and run and leave his forge to crumble.
Yeah, I was going to say rescue him.
Yeah,
is like the rescue him and all of his gear, and not necessarily in that order.
Exactly. Yeah, and he's sort of saying, look, if my forge goes, how are we going to replenish anything in the future? And so say, well, we don't have time. We either take this now, we've got an hour, otherwise we're gonna be stuck. So make a decision. But before anyone can, one of the gigantic loading towers explodes, and as it's collapsing, Sigismund says, right, we haven't got an hour, we're going now, let's get out of here. And these deafening war horns start blaring, and 6 warlord titans smash through the outskirts of Cain's forge, completely caught them unaware. And Sigismund said, right, get on your ship now. And Cain's still protesting because he just can't fathom that. Like, I mean, how old do you think he is? A couple 100 years old?
More than likely, yeah. I mean, they're not probably as long-lived as Astartes, but they're still, these are Mechanicum, right? They're incredibly enhanced, and
all the knowledge. He's Mars' number 2, and everything he's worked for is now being squashed.
Yeah.
And he's just not taking it. And Sigismund says, look, stop messing around. Your forge is gone. You need to come with us. And also, side note, you're now the new fabricator general, so you need to come with us.
Congratulations on your promotion.
And then Cain can't quite take it in. He says, well, what about Zeph and Maximal? And Sigismund says, we can do nothing for them. Yeah. They must stand or fall on their own.
Classic,
so a lot to take in.
Classic Astartes stuff. It's like real, time of war. There's tough choices that have to be made, and in a very, very short time, Cain and his perspective of the world has, turned 360 and entirely crumpled around him, right? So it's a bit of a change, and then also for him as well, he's having to leave behind loyalists. Yeah. In Zeph and what's his chops? Maximal. Yeah. So he's having to leave them behind when they're just victims of the same heresy that Lucas Crom and Kelbor Howe have brought to the Red Planet. So not feeling particularly fair for him, but it is what it is, and he's got a not pro-human, what do they call them? Post-human Astarte, basically telling him he has to go. He really doesn't have much choice. No.
I mean, at least he got a promotion out of it. Yeah. So some people benefit.
This is true. Like, he'll be able to get new business cards.
Oh, yeah. Cool. So I'm sure we'll revisit those. When we last saw Dahlia, she just inherited Semyon's power, and he turned to dust, and shortly afterwards Severin turned and stepped off the ledge, off the edge of the cliff.
Yes, indeed. Moment. Too much for a tiny little mind to handle.
It was a bad acid trip.
Yes, indeed.
And so Dahlia is about to lurch over the edge to where her friend was, and Romu grabbed her before she could fall. And Zooch grabs her, and they try and comfort her and says, look, she did that. She was the type of person who needed certainty, and this place has just shown her that there is nothing certain in the universe. Caxton's still unconscious, laying in the recovery position on the floor. And Zooch says, look, he should be fine. He passed out as soon as the madness started. So hopefully he didn't see too much and it won't have any lasting effects.
He's laughing. Caxton's the one that gets out of this scot-free.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, he's just going to lay there now, and that's the end of him.
Yeah. He's done. He's just going to wake up and be like, "Oh, I missed it." Yeah, you did. That's fine.
Yeah. Well done, buddy. Good effort.
Yeah.
Thanks for the trip. And Zooch says, oh, "Are we going to release the dragon now?" And Dahlia says, "No, look, you were right before. Some things do need to stay locked up forever." And tells him that she's been brought here to replace Semyon as guardian, and Zooch is begging her not to stay, but she says, look, I won't be alone. And Romu bows before her and says that as long as he functions, he will protect her. And she says, well, that may be a very long time, and takes hold of his hand and passes a small amount of the glowing power over to him. And like she did, all his achy joints and rusty bolts are healed and back to 100%. As good as new.
Yeah.
So with that, Zooch and Romu carry Caxton back along the path they'd taken to get there, back through the abandoned laboratory, and then back through the glowing tunnels of the Noctis labrythius, and back to the surface where their crawler waited, where it had run out of power. And Zooch asked if Dahlia really has to stay, and she says she did. And they hugged openly, and he cried and said, I'm never going to see you again, will I? And she says, no, you won't. And you can't tell anyone about this place. Tell them that I died when the Kabam machine attacked us. And Zooch says, well, what about Caxton? And she says, when he wakes up, tell him that I think I would have loved him. And I'm sorry that we never got to find out. Bummer. That's not really a nice thing to wake up to.
Oh, dear.
I mean, they had one night together, didn't they?
Yeah.
Or a couple of nights, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, this is no good for his point of view. Not only does he pass out, but he's been cock-blocked by some mysterious power.
some creepy old man in a cave.
Yeah. So it's not gone well for him.
No.
His character arc is not strong.
No. I mean, again, he was another means to getting her there, wasn't he? But
yeah.
I mean, he hasn't been killed by an assassin, and he hasn't thrown himself off a ledge, so he's doing okay.
But yeah, he's pretty good. Like, if you look at the list of her friends,
yeah,
he's coming out on top.
Yeah, and he got to sleep through the worst of it.
Exactly. Yeah. He's not gonna none of the scars that the others have to bear. Like Zooch, like Jesus,
he's seen the lot. Yeah, he's gonna need some therapy.
Yeah.
And so he says, well, how am I supposed to get home? Like the cargo 5's not working. And the golden light shines in Dahlia's eyes, who said, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to give it enough power to get you back to the Magna City. And as they begin to walk towards it, the crawler explodes in front of them, and the Kabam machine rolls through the smoke towards them.
Yep.
I don't know. They really don't know what's going on, do they? Like, to think that maybe that was a good thing that thing's been blown up, because they're not going back to the Magma City.
No, well, they don't know. Yeah, they don't know what's actually happening, because before, like they obviously heard the chatter about it, but the war that's come to Mars, they're pretty much unaware of it all, because they've been on their quest to go after the dragon to try and find out what it is and maybe let it out. And then she's got there, had the Holy Grail moment, and then has gone, oh no, we can't. And so, like, right, okay, cool, I guess.
Somehow they've managed to find the one path across Mars that's avoided all the nukes going off.
Well, because they as we talked about the last time when they were on their train journey, they were going to all of the quiet, Crater's Edge and
No One Town.
Yeah, exactly. Like Lonely Whistle and all of those like tired little places where no one lives. So I can't see that there was anything too strategic happening. And because it's the Noctis Labyrinth, where in the past, because they mention it as well, that none of the adepts that went out there before could find a way to make their forges work, because there's too much bad juju going on. I guess there's nothing out there, so war isn't going to come to that part of the world. apart from, with the exception of the Caban machine.
Yes. And we will revisit them again as we do. We're going to go back to Zeph in the Magma City now. And she is watching her monitors in absolute horror. The city's laying in ruins, as are the forges of Cain, Crom, and Maximal. And basically anybody's named forge is having a bad time at the minute. And she's watching it. Maximal's forge is being overrun. The Astartes and Croms were retreating, and from Cain's as well. And when she'd first seen them lift off from Cain's forge, she'd hoped they were going to do an arc and land at her forge to throw back the Dark Mechanicum.
Yeah.
But quickly it was obvious that they'd recovered as much armor as they could, and they were going to evacuate, secure it, and then go and try and stand against Horus and take business elsewhere. She opened a news sphere to Maximal, Princeps Cavalerio of Tempestus, and Lord Catarix and Verticorder of Tyrannis. And she says the order from Cain is save what you can, destroy the rest. And they all feel the abandonment and betrayal, but logically they understand the legions can't risk losing what they saved in another rescue attempt. Maximal definitely promised that the enemy is not going to take his reactors, and Zeph confirmed they would not take her Akashic reader, but she was gutted that she and Dahlia had never gotten it working.
Yeah.
And Verticorder says then there is only one order left to give. And again, we'll come back to them, because now we're going to go straight back to Dahlia, and as the Caban machines roll in towards him, and Dahlia can sense its absolute hatred towards her. She knew that she wouldn't be able to trick it again. The machine had learned its lesson. Romu screamed for them to get back in towards the cave, and it fired a rocket at them, which fell short, sending them flying across the ground. And they turned back to look at it as it made ready to finish them off. And more gunfire erupted, but after a moment, Dahlia was shocked to see that it hadn't been aimed at them. The Caban machine stood still intact, but smoke was coming from it following the barrage it had taken, its void shield screaming to remain alive. 2 knights in midnight blue armor strode towards it. The Knights of Tyrannis had arrived. Finally, they've made it.
They got there.
Yeah. Maven was overjoyed to see the enemy machine could be hurt. His autoloaders got to work reloading the cannon on his arm, and he unsheathed a 4-meter warblade on his right fist. The machine was exactly how he remembered it, but he was struck by the creepy artificial intelligence he sensed as it aimed its weapons at him. Maven then spotted a small group of people hiding in a ditch with a red cloak protector. He didn't know who they were, but the fact that the Caban machine was trying to kill them was reason enough to protect them. He voxed over to Kronos and said, "Let's take this thing out exactly how we planned." And Kronos charged in, and Maven ripped loose on it. They had to work in unison, but also change their methods as the machine had learned their attacks already, so they had to ignore their decades of training and try and be unpredictable to the Caban machine. They ran it in unnatural zigzagging patterns, opening fire on it from awkward angles and forcing it back in confusion. It couldn't hit them as it was struggling to decide where and when to shoot. Maven then noticed that Kronos had been clipped a few times and his shields were flickering, and told him to mix it up more. It's learning too fast. And Kronos told him to shut up. "I don't find it as easy to break the rules as you do." Now, even when they're like getting absolutely mullered, they're just like, he's still not happy with it. He's still not happy with Maven.
Come on, get it together. But yeah, it's quite a funny section. I said fun. It's not like humorous funny. It's more like seeing them. The 2 knights, obviously, with all of their training, trying really, really hard to be unpredictable.
Yeah,
it's always that time thing. If someone says to you, "Be unpredictable," you're almost predictable in your unpredictability, if that makes sense. Because it's like, oh, I know, I'll be unpredictable by running in zigzags, and the machine's going to go, "He's being unpredictable."
Are you going to zig or zag?
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling issue that I have with it, but fine. For the essence of this, I get it.
Yeah. So Maven reversed his advance to try and throw it off, but too late. The Caban machine hit him directly in the chest, sending him back in a painful blast, and he dropped to one knee. He turned one shoulder to face the Kaban machine to absorb as much damage as he could on his last remaining shield, but felt agony as the armor started splintering away. He called out in desperation, and Kronos charged the Kaban machine, smashing into it before moving back, and the Kaban was ready and sent a bolt of plasma through his chest mount. Kronos was able to dart through the smoke before it could finish him off. Kronos had taken a risk by exposing himself, but the Kaban machine was still outnumbered, so it backed up against the cliff face, just as they had expected. Maven fired at the cliffs above, sending huge boulders crashing down on the Kaban, which somehow managed to keep its shields alive. He then charged the machine, firing like mad, and Kronos came out from the smoke and did exactly the same, and eventually the weight of fire broke the shields. Maven charged and drove his 4-meter blade directly into the machine, and it screamed out in pain as he twisted the blade, killing it. As it died, it emitted a powerful death scream, which smashed most of the systems in Maven's cockpit. Injured and exhausted, he backed off, the Equitus Bellum satisfied with its kill.
Right.
So the essence of the machine rushed through him in order to ease his own pain. Before he realised it, the soul of his mount came to the forefront and took control. He tried to fight it, but he couldn't call out to Kronos, and couldn't do that either. And then outside, he saw a small woman led by a robe protector approach him. Against his will, he felt the Equitus Bellum drop to a knee and bow down to her. He sensed that Kronos had done the same as well. The woman looked up with fire in her eyes and touched his mount, and instantly he felt warmth infuse every molecule of his being, and the woman said, "Machine, heal thyself."
Nice callback to the very beginning when the Emperor did that, right?
Yeah.
That's what the Emperor did with. So, yeah, interesting, that kind of callback.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, well, we know that the Emperor put the dragon down in the caves or in the Noctis labrythius.
Yep.
And Dahlia's got it. So what's the power come from, though? Like, is this the Emperor's power, which Semyon had to keep the dragon at bay? Is that what's been passed to her? So she now got some of the Emperor's power?
I think it's that.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. I'm sure there'll be other lore heads out there that will have a different take. My take is that she is a conduit for some of the Emperor's energies, as it were, that are allowing her to not only like heal machines like the Titans and everything else that comes up in a minute, but also that because that's part of her gift, as it were. Yeah. So that's why she's kind of selected for this. But also then gives her the ability to keep the Dragon of Mars, whatever that may be, under wraps and sedated.
Because I don't think we're going to find out anything else for a little while now, or not in this book anyway. Given where we are in the book and how long is left, no, we won't find anything more about her power. Like that won't be confirmed, or the Dragon of Mars. Do you know?
That doesn't mean we won't in the future.
I was going to say, do you know if we see Dahlia again in the series?
Do you know what? I don't know. Well, I don't know.
No.
As I said, I don't know if, as with all of these things with the heresy, everyone tends to go for the bolter stuff. So I just start looking at, when do I see the Space Wolves again? When do I see the Dark Angels again? When do I see the first appearance of the Blood Angels? Like proper. The Mechanicum, I've not looked to see when the next Mechanicum book, if any, pops up. I think surely we will. I think we do hear from Dahlia again, but I don't know if it's actually in the Heresy series. I know she's in the lore,
right?
Like, so she is. Like, if you look her up on like Lexicanum or what's the other one that people look at? Lexicanum or the fandom wikis, you'll find more on Dahlia. And like, total tangent. I was watching a battle report, Tabletop Tactics, just last week, and they were playing Mechanicus versus, I can't remember who they were up against. It's Mechanicum versus someone else, but they had named one of their characters, one of like the adepts, Dahlia, like 330 or something.
Oh, really?
Like, oh, that's a nice touch. Like, I wonder whether that's in relation to this or just you know,
that'd be a quality mini to have. It just walks around healing everything all the time.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But as I said, total tangent. But it was a nice touch, and as I was listening to it, I was like, oh, Dahlia. I know Dahlia.
Oh, check me out.
I get that reference.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So hopefully we'll learn some more, because I still feel like her arc. I'm pretty sure I can't remember if we touched on her again at all, but her arc's pretty much complete, and I still don't feel like we know enough.
No.
So we'll move on to chapter 3.05. As night fell over the magma city, so did most of the forge, as it was bathed in fire from relentless bombardments. Deus Tempestus walked through the ruins of the city, flattening anything on its way. The full strength of Legio Tempestus marches out from the shelter of the magma city, their blue armor and banners contrasting the gloomy dark skies around them. Cavalerio looked up at the center position. To his right was Sharek's battle group, including Cassim and Lamnos, and Princeps Suzak to his left, with Morden and Basek. As they formed up, he addressed them all. This is the most dreadful and glorious moment of our lives. I'm not one for sentiment, but if the day of our deaths isn't one for melodrama, then I don't know what is. All that matters is that we show these Mortis dogs what it means to stand against us and feel our wrath. It has been an honour and a privilege. Let the Omnisire guide you. And then the replies are, the honour is ours, good hunting, and general cheers and bravado going into it.
That's it. They're the band on the deck of the Titanic. They keep playing. It's going down.
They're Blackadder, really, aren't they?
Yeah, that's an even better reference.
Yeah.
The end of Blackadder goes forth. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So below them, though, are the Tempestus Scutari, who are marching forward to meet those from Mortis. And Cavalieri took a moment to admire the bravery of them to go to war beneath a Titan battle, because not only are they got to worry about getting shot and stabbed by each other, they're going to get stepped on and blown up as well.
Because at that size and scale of battle, like the Scutari and the ground troops that are underneath them are, that's all collateral damage, right?
It almost seems pointless, doesn't it?
They're only tangent, side note. So what they're traditionally for the Scutari when it comes to Titan battles and stuff like that, and this is seen if you watch Hell's Reach, it's a good example. They're there to stop like squirrely little like orc commandos or other melee units and like counter Titan grenade units from getting too close to the weaker knee joints and feet. So they're just there as like a melee shield. Slightly different in this example because they're going. It's Titan War, right? Normally they would be deployed as part of not necessarily Titan War. Titan as a weapon in a war. They need Scutari or ground troops just to act as a flak barrier. Right. Whereas this is Titan War. That these two little groups, they don't do anything. They just fight each other while these big Titans are having to go at each other.
I suppose it's better than getting melted inside a magma city or something, though, isn't it? So they might as well go out fighting.
Yeah, and in all fairness, I know, like what his chops has said, like he admires them. These are Scutari. Like how much of their humanity is left is debatable.
Fair enough. Yeah, I suppose they're just weaponized killing machines now, aren't they? Like most things.
They're probably a bit better than servitors. Like they still, have a bit of nous about them, but they're also not. They're better than servitors, but that's not saying much.
No, well, fair enough. So that's all going on below. He then gives the order to march, knowing that they've owned. Let's start that again. So he put the Scutari from his mind, and and he scanned the Mortis engines. They only had one engine more than he did, but with their Aquila Ignis, Legio Mortis outgunned them massively. However, following the loss of their warhounds earlier on, Mortis were keeping it tight together as they were worried that Tempestus had another trick up their sleeves. And Cavallerio gave the order to march. On the other side of the Magma City, Melgator's twisted Scutari protectors threw themselves in droves against the Balkan Gate. A mighty blast of artillery cleared the gateway, and before the Dark Mechanicum could regroup, the gates opened and the Knights of Tyrannis strode out. Verticorder and Catarix led 9 other knights, formed a wedge, and they charged full speed into enemy lines, killing hundreds every second with their ferocious firepower. The enemy was stunned at first, but were able to regroup and sent their own armour forward. 2 knights were caught in the sheer mass of Scutari and dragged down, and another knight was killed when an experimental weapon from the vaults of the Movarek shot a beam of dark light directly through it, melting the machine from the inside. Another knight had its legs taken out by the weapon, and a host of enemy clambered onto it. And rather than letting them scavenge from it, Verticorder turned back and fired at it until it hit its core, sending it up in a blast of plasma. Already, only 7 knights remained, but they had managed to cover almost 2 kilometers, and it wasn't just a feral charge. Each step brought them closer to their target, Ambassador Melgator. And then back to the Titans. Cassian was in his warhound, Raptoria, and he was darting around the flank of a bigger Reaver, which was ahead of the rest of the Mortis engines. He was using cover to hide himself between bursts of fire, wearing down the Reaver shields. Although Mortis was closing in, the enemy Reaver wasn't going to let this warhound try and get in its way, and diverted its advance towards Cassian, smashing through a building to deny his cover. It caught Cassian in its sights, and the Reaver stopped and began blasting away the rest of the buildings to manage to get a direct hit on the smaller engine. And as soon as it started, Princess Lamnos in the Astros Lux emerged from the shadows behind the Reaver, advanced, pouring heavy fire in a concentrated area, and eventually blew out his shields. Both of the Tempestus engines now fired in concentrated volleys at the exposed Mortis engines, and its bellowing warhound turned to screams of agony before its armour gave out in an explosive way. The 2 Tempestus engines bounded away as the mortally wounded engine fell in slow motion to the ground. Cassian moved on, using the buildings and smoke and ash as cover, as Astros Lux backed off into the shadows and moved around the dead engine. Unfortunately, this attack on the Reaver had left them exposed for too long, and the dead Mortis Reaver partner had worked up a firing solution and sent a huge volley of missiles which impacted around the legs of Astros Lux, knocking it to the ground, breaking its shields instantly. He tried to crawl into cover, but his legs were completely broken and it was too slow moving. The enemy Reaver simply walked over the Astros Lux, crushing it. Engine kill. On the far left flank, there was much less cover to utilise for a swift hunt. Princeps Mordant in his Reaver Arcadia Fortis and Princeps Basic in the Warhound Vulpus Rex worked in unison against 2 large Mortis Reavers. Mortis had superior firepower and knew it as they pushed forward, not counting on the 2 commanders who were ferocious hunters willing to give them hell and would get everything they had before being destroyed themselves. The two Tempestus engines fired everything they could at the nearest Reaver until its shields were shut off to avoid them blowing out completely. Farsis Hastus, a Warlord engine, had been waiting for the opportunity and fired a beam of nuclear energy, hitting the Reaver in the cockpit, causing a large explosion, and the wreckage flew as far as 6 kilometers around. As the 2 smaller engines had been concentrated on the Reaver, it allowed its partner to advance untouched, and it was able to get close enough to fire Arcadia Fortis so brutally that its shields gave out too quickly. It fired a lucky shot, hitting the carapace emitter, which connected to the engine's neural network, which in turn connected to the cerebral cortex of Princeps Mordant. He died as if he had been shot directly in the head, grinding the engine to the halt and leaving the remaining crew trapped and at the mercy of its foes. Princeps Basek in the smaller engine attempted to flee. However, it was already weakened from previous attacks, and the Screaming Reaver fired in front of it, causing the earth to erupt, leaving a large crater for it to fall into. As it fell, it snapped off an arm. Vulpus Rex landed with broken legs, and Basek tried to eject from the engine, but a brutal volley tore his engine to pieces. Suddenly, the dark sky was lit up with a bright sunset of an atomic detonation somewhere in the distance. So, pretty brutal for Cavalierio's team there. I think they lost more.
Yeah, it's sad times really, because you root for them, and they're going out and they're noble. They're trying to have their noble way out, but there's just numbers are against them, right? They don't have the weight of firepower that Mortis do. So it is kind of they put up a really good fist of it, as it were, and then the weight of numbers just gets to them.
Yeah, I think that Mordant's death was pretty grim though. Just like for the crew around him, just seeing him drop dead inside the machine.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, I mean, as I said, as if he's shot in the head. That's it's pretty rough. Pretty rough going, even as a Princeps.
Yeah. So I think they've lost 3 of them, and 3 like Princeps as well. Like three guys who have been mentioned on and off throughout as well. Like Mordant definitely wasn't he?
It's
not so much the other 2.
It's a significant loss of experience and Titans, because it's engine death, right? They're losing whole assets. It's not like playing on the tabletop and you lose a couple of blokes in your squad.
Yeah.
You're still pretty combat effective. This is one and done.
Yeah. But we'll come back to a bit more of that in a minute. And so, like I said, the nuclear blast, or the massive atomic blast, has just gone off. And Zeph's still watching things from her screens and has to shield her eyes from the bright light. The human portion of her body brimmed with sadness, knowing what that explosion had been. Mm-hmm. She scanned the monitors again. All along Pulver Maximal's reactor change at the Ulysses Fosse, a wave of fiery mushroom clouds was causing unimaginable damage for hundreds of kilometers around. Goodbye, Maximal, said Zeph before refocusing on the conflict at her own forge. And now it was her turn to follow in Maximal's footsteps, to ensure that Kelbor Howe couldn't capture her technology for his own ends. She turned away from the screens and walked towards a shaft descending down through the forge, followed by a primitive servitor in a hooded robe. They paused together by the shaft as a dozen slim pillars raised out the ground. She stepped into the circle and connected herself to each column and began giving instructions to shut down her forge. Muttering out loud, she hoped that Kane had been able to save some of her noosphere data, as it would be a shame as everything she had created would be lost. And as she was saying this to herself out loud, a voice replied, "Even in defeat, you are vain." And Zeph was unsurprised as she saw the sleek assassin floating towards her. "My employer wants this forge intact, so you must stop what you're doing." And Zeph refused, so Romare shot her twice in the chest. So Maximal's gone. Another big character.
Yeah, like
tick him off the list.
Gone in a big way as well. Like it's they only do it one way in Mars, and that's big explosions.
He didn't think he'd have it in him as well. The way they sort of talked about him being a bit fussy.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, you're right. Yeah. It's interesting. Like there's still, even though these are adepts and as described, somewhat removed from their humanity, there's still a sense of honor. And that's what comes through as they're kind of destroying their forges is it's we can't let it fall to the traitors. So there is an element of honor that's going on there, which is quite nice. I suppose it pulls them together a little bit with the Astartes side of things, which is very honor led.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it's quite good. But big character for this book and for the wider setting.
Yeah.
because we don't really talk about that. Like these are forge masters of Mars. Who up until now have held quite big sway and influence, and now
he was a big deal, wasn't he?
Yeah, and now they're literally going nuclear.
Mm-hmm.
So it is quite a big deal for the setting as well.
Yeah, but we're going to finish this chapter on probably my favourite scene from the book. Now,
I was going to say this bit is good.
this is the Knights of Tyrannis last hurrah. So definitely, like we've said a few times, if you're going to read anything, this is the scene to read.
Yeah,
I think. So, Knights of Tyrannis. Verticorda was feeling it now. His shields were completely gone. His carapace was cracked, and he had dozens of wounds. He couldn't feel his left arm, and the knee that had been healed by the Emperor all those years ago was seizing up again. All around him, the enemy was battering him and the remaining knights. 2 more had fallen to get them this far. He wasn't afraid of death, but he was afraid that the enemy would capture his machine. He fired at a group of protectors who were trying to outflank them, whilst Catrix kept carving the path next to them. The 3 remaining knights were the best he'd ever seen. Yelsic, Agamon, and Old Stator, who had survived from his grievous wound earlier on. Ahead, he could see the blank pavilion where Melgator sat watching his men die, and he promised he would not die whilst Melgator still lived. Unfortunately, Agamon was finally killed after wave of soldiers had died throwing themselves against his knight, detonating explosive against him, finally taking out his shields and bringing him to the ground. Old Stator died next. In a glorious effort, he extended twin blades outside either side, held them down, kept them low, and ran directly through the masses towards Melgator's standard. Unfortunately, a lucky shot hit him in the cockpit, and he crashed to the ground. The last 3 knights charged through the opening that Stator had provided them. Catarix rode tall next to him, his knight on the verge of destruction, and on the other side, Yelsic, who had been by his side from the day the Emperor had first stepped foot on Olympus Mons, still carrying the Tyrannis banner high. "The bastards are running," shouted Verticorda as they saw the golden banners moving away from them. Catarix called him a coward, and Yelsic claimed that he won't escape them. Fresh volleys hit Verticorda, making him cry out in pain. Even as the fresh wounds threatened to bring him down, he felt a sustaining power flow through him. The presence of Ares Lictor's former masters poured through him, eager to accompany him in its last moments. They sighted Melgator surrounded by a cohort of brutal ogre-like Scutari. The 3 of them rode to hell, smashing through the outer soldier cordon. All 3 of them were broken, spilling vital fluids. This was the last action they would ever take. With their final breaths, they would take this foe and victory. Verticorda mowed down a dozen warriors, but screamed in pain again. This time, though, his arm was shorn from its mount in a beam of light from a flame lance. His vision blurred, and blood filled his throat. He was dying. Yelsic ran forward, catching the brunt of the flame lance, shearing through his armour, blowing up his cockpit, and his mount skidded through the enemy warriors to a final halt. "Into them!" cried Catarix. And acting on instinct alone, the last 2 knights ran through the path left by Yelsic's corpse. Melgator was screaming for his bearers to get him away. Both knights aimed at him, and Verticorda shouted, "I cast the lightning of Tyrannis at thee." Both knights opened fire, strafing the ground, blasting through the Scutari, and hit Melgator. His voice shield protected him for less than a moment, but the concentrated fire overpowered it, and the resulting explosion hurled him through the air. He was cut to pieces by the knights before he even hit the floor. With the enemy dead, Verticorda felt the spirits leaving his mount, and the pain came flooding back to him. His knee finally blew out, and he fell down, and in his last moments he smiled as he heard Catrix shouting defiance to his own end. As he died, the spirit of the Ares Lictor welcomed him home. And that's the end of the Knights of Tyrannis.
What a way to go, though, right?
Honestly, that was. I read it when I was doing this. I stopped. I was reading it, and I thought I haven't written anything down, so I had to read it again. But it's so good. Like I'd like to hear that on the audiobook.
Oh, it's good. That's what I mean. It you really get chills, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like it's it's just really good. Like, it's
Mhm.
really well written. If you listen to the audiobook, it's really, really well read. You feel the like the satisfaction that they're having, even though like it's the last charge, and like, as a reader, you're like, good fucker, I'm glad they got him.
Yeah, I know. It's one of the things that it's like they're all good characters, but you'd be pissed off to see Melkor appear in the future.
Yeah,
Like, I'm glad he's dead.
it's
Little
like,
prick.
good, well done. Like,
Yeah.
good job, guys.
Do you know what? I'd love to see that animated with old Stasor getting the big blades out and just
Well, it's you could just see him like shrunk and like holding them down low and running.
Yeah.
In. It's very Pacific Rim.
yeah. I think I mean, such a cool scene, and it's sad because the Knights of Tyrannis, they've got the best name, I think, of any legion in this book. They've got some of the best sort of characters, and like knights are just cool, I think, as well.
They are amazing. Like,
yeah,
they look cool. They're totally impractical and would never work in reality. But
no,
they're just one of those that is very, very cool. And like, I feel for going back to the actual tabletop, I feel for Knights players, because again, they're great models. You could only take a couple because of the points cost. And then, you can't really do much with them because they're so big.
yeah,
But while you've got them, they're very cool.
yeah.
So yeah, I do like a knight.
Yeah, and they probably score one of the best victories as well. Like, it probably doesn't mean too much more, but they killed someone who was key in bringing this destruction on everyone as well.
Yeah, no, it was they took down the target they needed to take down, and as I said, proper blaze of glory. Like, it's there's no that's exactly what it is. It's a blaze of glory, and that's the way they went out. So all of it, as I said, it is chills, because you're hearing about the the spirits of the previous riders, the machine spirits as well, all like dragging them together to just drag them through this last sort of Herculean effort, knowing that it's a one-way trip. There is no way this is going to end any way other than them dying. But they're like, we don't care. We're there is no way Melgator is getting away with it. And it's just very, very cool.
So we're going to move into the final chapter now of Mechanicum. It's been a journey, and this is gonna go fast. We're going to jump between the last of Legio Tempestus and maybe somebody else who's still alive. So 306, blood and warnings filled the liquid around Cavaliero's amniotic fluid chamber. Critical failures and warnings telling him the engine was suffering. Ahead of him, 3 of his warlords advanced towards the Aquila Ignis, which had not yet opened fire. His Moderati gave him an update on the position of the remaining engines. They were still outgunned, and the enemy were given as good as they got, and the commanders of each were skilled, as you did not become a princeps without proving yourself 100 times over. But he did have an advantage that no one else did. Being entombed in the amniotic fluid made him one with the machine and his skill, and he had managed to keep this engine alive when it should have died several times already. Being so in tune with it, he was able to act a couple seconds ahead of anybody else. He then targeted a warlord titan in front of him, smashed it with his volcano cannon, knocking its shields offline. They had been so close to the explosion, it affected his systems, so he ordered them to back off, refocus, and make sure the enemy couldn't focus on them. The volcano cannon cooled and charged, and he hit the enemy right in the center, almost cutting it clean down the middle as it vanished in a wall of flame. His crew cheered, and the warlord crumbled as he had taken a risk, moving his power from the shields to the cannon, but he had needed the extra killing power. He breathed a sigh of relief, but then Aquilus Ignis opened fire. Zeph, tried to remain upright, but her legs gave out. I hope you weren't hoping to get some quick closure on.
Yeah, that's it. In case you missed it, we're now somewhere else.
Yeah, you blinked. So yeah, but unfortunately, Zeph's legs gave out. She slumped down onto her knees. She looked at her chest and at the 2 wounds that were leaking blood, but was surprised as her void shield was still intact. Romare stepped up with a look of amusement and said, "I suppose you're wondering why your void shield didn't save you. These rounds are handcrafted and utilize technology similar to warp missiles used by Titans." Actually, Zeph said, "I was wondering how long it would take for the new spheric trip code to affect you. You think you are so clever, assassin, but I am a high adept of the Mechanicum, and no one is cleverer than me." Romare was shocked when she saw the elegant code in Zeph's data packets seep into her own augmetics, slowly shutting them down. She panicked, but Zeph said it's too late, and Romare's magnograv thrusters cut out, causing her to crash to the floor. The assassin tried to move, but she was not used to having useless metal legs. And Zeph also tried to move, but one of the bullets had hit her spine, and she couldn't feel her legs either. Romare said, "I'm going to kill you." And Zeph said, "No, you won't." And she called for her old friend Polk. And she said, "You remember my apprentice, don't you? The one whose mind you destroyed? Even he can still be useful. And I've been able to hide him from you in plain sight due to his now crude nature." Polk bent over and lifted up Romare, and Zeph read the confusion and terror in her biofield. And Zeph said to Polk, "Dispose of her," pointing at the shaft dropping down into the magma below. "Hold her tight all the way down." Zeph turned back to the control column and gave out her last instruction. So that's your assassin done by her own trickery,
which I really enjoyed. I liked the interplay, because this assassin has always been like, I am in total control.
Yeah.
And even like here, she's like, "Oh, I wonder. I can see you wondering why this has happened." And then Zeph's like, "No, fuck you." And then I really love the touch of the old assistant who had his mind mangled.
Yeah.
Turned into a servitor, because that's all he is now.
Yeah.
But is able, even if he's not conscious of it, is getting his own revenge. And I just like chef's kiss. It was a good moment. Very, very nice.
That's it. He's dead anyway, so why not go out like that?
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of that at this point. There's a lot of that going on in this book. So you're like, again, like, dying for the cause. You feel like, a lot of these characters, you wish they maybe we'd hear more from them, or other stories and stuff like that. But this is the way of it. It's a brutal heresy.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the fact that this assassin, who doesn't do a lot to endear themselves to us as a reader, is getting their comeuppance in a very satisfying way.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? Like, she did it because she enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Wiped his mind, and now, fuck you.
yeah, exactly. This is what you get. So I quite enjoyed this little section and that element where he as I said, unknowingly gets his revenge.
Yeah. Right, and now the big finale. So, Titans, what we've all come here for. Aquila Ignis obliterated Farsis Hastutus. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. An engine that had marched to victory on 100 worlds. Cavallero felt the death of Princeps Suzak like a knife to the heart. He had to fight off letting grief of the death of his friend consume him. And with that, he demanded a sit rep. "I need to know who still stands." The only returns came from Metellus, Cerebria, and Raptora. And the Scutari were still fighting, but they were almost completely gone. His Titans had fought like warriors and had done their fair share of killing before their own demise. All that remained from Mortis was the giant Titan monster. No matter what, Mortis would leave the majority of its engines a burning wreck on the surface, despite expecting their much easier victory. He canted for his shield to be brought back online, and the Moderati reported that the Aquila was now firing again. He opened his comms to his brothers, but before he could say anything, and the impact hit him, more painful than the death of his previous Victorious Magna. Internal parts exploded all over the Titan, and he spasmed in pain in the tank. In the last seconds of his life, he saw his friends march towards the mortis engine, knowing they couldn't hurt it, but they tried anyway. Cerebro died first. His right leg smashed away as it fell. A scornful barrage of rockets finished it off, and Raptoria lasted a few more seconds. Its shields were wiped out by another volley, and this time its speed couldn't save it, as a volley of apocalypse rockets wiped it out a kilometre square where it had been standing. Cavallero pushed himself to the front of his tank, and he saw that his Moroderati was dead, slumped over his station. The steersman Lucas was no more than a mangled lump of flesh on the floor, and he couldn't see anybody else at the front of the cockpit because it had been completely ripped open. And not looking through any screens, he could see the mortis engine marching towards him. The only living being inside with him was his engine seer, who had replaced Margus Agre, the guy whose brain had melted out of his head previously. He had only been spared from the fireball due to not having any flesh. And he said to him, "We can't let them capture us. You know what to do." And he agreed and shut down all the reactor safeties. Seconds later, Deus Tempestus went critical and exploded with the force of a miniature supernova. The last act of destruction on Mars was saved for the Magma City itself. With Melgator dead, his warriors rallied under the banner of a warlord named Las Taol. They stormed the city, killing soldiers that resisted and capturing magos and adepts that had survived. Artillery continued to impact any defences, but the ground began to shake. The Magma City had always been regulated in order to prevent the lava from overflowing into the city and stopping the volcano from erupting. But in her dying moments, Zephyr had disabled the regulators, setting off an unstoppable reaction. The ground shook and lava began pouring over the walls of the city as it slowly began to sink. The Vulcan Gate crumbled and the Typhon Causeway cracked and tipped more than 10,000 men and war machines into the magma lakes below. Mortis sounded the retreat, but nothing could outrun the overflowing lava which poured into the city and beyond. The Aquila Ignis turned and walked at flank speed, but even this was not fast enough as the lava reached it and overtook. It managed about another 5 steps before its shields went and its feet melted, pulling it down into the lava. It fell backwards, crushing itself under its own weight. The only thing that was not destroyed was the Hellstorm cannon. In time, this would be recovered for use on another world, but for now, the Titan was dead. Zeph's forge filled with lava as it sank. All of her great work was destroyed, as if it never existed in the first place. With her destruction, all hope of lifting the Imperium into a golden age of scientific progress was lost forever. And that's pretty much the end of Mechanicum. All the Titans died.
It's pretty sad at the end. Like we've gone through this like real big journey through 3 different kind of visions. Like Dahlia's piece, Zeph's sort of arc, and then obviously the Titan side of it. And the Titans and Zeph end up in the same sort of place. Yeah. Same sort of arc that comes together. The Dahlia piece is slightly aside and different, but is just something that becomes something very, very unique. Yeah, it's just it's sad,
tragic.
Like you feel really like there's a noble, honourable sacrifice by the good guys, but a lot of the good guys, and we're not really going to see any of it pay off, like in terms of the heresy, because it's early on, but it's also so far removed.
I mean, like the whole point of it now, like the whole point of that was, let's take each other's stuff.
Yeah,
we want it for our war, and it's like they've just destroyed themselves, not out of spite, but it is out of spite. So you can't have it. So all these loyalists have just had to destroy their life's work, kill themselves, and lose everything just so the chaos couldn't get it.
Yeah, the traitors are not, they can't get any of the technology, and they also can't get any of the resources to manufacture. All that's I'm trying to think what ones you've got left. You've got like Kelbor Howe's still got his forge.
Yeah,
but that's about it. Like there's not many more knocking around.
no, I think did Crumbs get complete? I can't remember. I don't think Crumbs got completely destroyed, did it? He managed to push him back.
But because it was Cambodias that was on Crom's. He went to secure that and found that he was one of the traitors. So was forced back. But so it's not a good time for the loyalists, the Mechanicum, or the Imperium in general.
Yeah. And that's it. And and like you said, it doesn't play out for anybody. I mean, a few people have managed to survive. On that list there, what we got? Kelbor Howe, Kane, a couple of others maybe.
Well,
made it off world.
So it's interesting that after this one, I think, and I don't know because I haven't got that far beyond it, but like it's a while before like a lot of the next sort of chunk of books are all very Astartes, with the exception of one that's about the Assassinorum, which is also a very good book.
That's Nemesis, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not too far away.
That's one that gets a bit of a critical panning. But I said I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, it's distant in my distant future.
Yeah. But I think it's a while before we get any more Mechanicum bits and pieces. And anything that's really related to it, other than hearing, minor, bits and pieces. It's like we know who Kelbor Howe is now, and that relates back to one of the books we've seen previously. I don't know the next time we actually get anything that's really focused on the Mechanicum. So although it's been good, it feels like it's it's kind of left for a little bit without really giving us much more future, if that makes sense. Because there's a lot that goes on here, right? Like Mars is effectively the traitors have won.
Yeah.
Like that's it. The traitors hold Mars. So
because Kane's in charge now, and he's fled. He's had to flee.
Yeah. So that's like a big deal. Like that in the scope of things, that's the traitors hold Mars. It is going to be it's going to be important because it's in the Sol system, and so would give Horus a perfect staging ground for launching his attacks on Terra. So I'm sure we'll hear more about it, but I think it's a while before we get there.
Yeah, we definitely have to, because in modern, Mars is back on the right side, isn't it? Like it's back
absolutely.
Terran control.
So Mars, but where because of this schism, schism of Mars, it's whereas before it was like the central forge world. Yeah. In modern day Imperium, there are multiple forge worlds that are, not. I would say on equal footing. I think it's fair to say on equal footing, so that Mars is no longer like it is the spiritual center of the Mechanicum, but ultimately there are other forge worlds that deliver just as much, if not more, than Mars, and primarily because this schism happened. Yeah, well, put all your eggs in one basket, sort of thing, innit? Yep, that's it. Cool. Well, I tell you what, we should do there is another page that we'll go through the addenda just to wrap up this book, and then we'll do our final thoughts and look forward to the next one, I think. Absolutely. So, addenda 1. The last 2 knights of Tyrannis made a steady descent into the rocky depths of the Medusa Fossae, searching for an automated research facility that Romu assured them they would find. Here, the 2 knights and their passengers would wait until the hostilities died down before emerging to see what was left of their home by order of the girl with the golden light. Deep
this is number 2. Deep in the Noctis labrythius, Dahlia and Romu took up their stewardship. A small measure of golden light had been transferred to Romu. They were content in their knowledge that their friends were far away from the fighting. Only much later, when Dahlia dared to return to the silver cavern, did she see that the book containing the Grand Lie of Mars had been taken. 10,000 years would pass before the next Guardian was drawn to the Noctis labrythius, but by then the damage was done. And that's the end of the book.
There we go. Yep.
So 2 Knights of Tyrannis still stand, and I'm assuming the 2 passengers they're talking about are Caxton and Zooch.
Zooch, yeah. What would be interesting is whether the Knights of Tyrannis remain Tyrannis or whether they become, what do they call them, free blades.
Right.
Total tangent. Again, what happens in the lore when a knightly house is destroyed, or they're the last remains? Those knights become or can become free blades, and they effectively will still fight for good, fight for Imperium and stuff like that. But they are effectively orphaned from their house because their house no longer exists.
Yeah.
So they effectively become free blades as it
Knights for hire.
That's it. It's kind of like that, which is quite, as I said, sad because it's Tyrannis, and we've been through a lot with them. But also, it's a cool bit of lore, so I quite like it. But I don't know how you go about it's not like the Titans are going to repopulate, so I don't I don't know how you go about bringing a house back.
They got quite a few years to wait underneath in the cavern, I guess.
That's true. That's true. I don't know.
You might figure it out.
Yeah, but it's nice that they're still around. And it's it's full circle, right? It's where we started.
Yeah. And then so who took the book?
The bit about the book, I mean, this is just GW causing all sorts of shit. Because who took the book? It could have been, well, it's going to be Zoosh or Caxton, but Caxton was unconscious.
Yeah.
It's not going to have been either of the Titan.
No, because they never went down there.
No. So what was her name when she chucked herself off?
Severin.
Did she chuck herself off?
Oh, what do you think she was hanging on?
Could be. I don't know. I mean, it's because it's a tale to nowhere, right?
Yeah.
It is GW purposely going, let's throw something out there that they can't ever answer to keep them noodling. It's the same as the Lost Primarchs, the Lost Legions. It's all that sort of stuff. It's like we're never going to tell you what's going to happen there. You're just going to have to keep guessing, and that's what this feels like. It's like, and it will take, I don't know, 10,000 years before that one's solved, and it's like, piss off. You pick that number out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You're talking shit. So I don't know. I will, and although I say that, what I will do is now have a serious Google to find out whether that does reveal itself, and there is anything about the Lie of Mars that comes up again. I don't think it does, but
it's got. I mean, I know it's only one book in a series of 50 plus, but it was a big deal for this book. It was one of the main points was the Grand Lie of Mars.
No, I know, but it's like the lore in this instance does. We're going to get into this side of it, but it does a lot of good things about maintaining a lot of the stories, a lot of the lore, a lot of the intrigue without actually moving it forward. So one of the more recent issues that I've read about, picked up online, is that by bringing Gilliman back, by creating these events that are moving the narrative forward, you now have to have an endpoint. You have to keep going. You've created movement. You have to keep moving it forward. Whereas before, it was all it didn't matter. You had these characters, you had these heroes. They existed in isolated stories. Now you've said, right, we've got that hero, that Primarch. We're going to bring him back, and then we're going to have these war zones like Nakmund and Octarius before it that are actually pushing the narrative forward, which is great in the one hand, because you are getting new campaigns, you get new things to do and play and stuff like that. But eventually it's going to cause problems, because you're going to have to get to a point where you have to resolve things. And that's what 40k has been really good at not doing, which is fine, because that's kept everyone interested. That means, you can, I can have my Ragnar Blackmane character and play him, or Dave can have his Helbrecht. But at some point or another, those characters have to die.
Yeah.
And that's the issue they've got, is you don't want anyone to die, but you also have to have everyone die, because we're now moving the narrative forward. So it's going to be interesting to see how they tackle that.
Yeah.
And again, tangent away from the Black Library and Horus Heresy.
Cool. So wrapping up then, final thoughts on Mechanicum.
I think it's good. I think it's a good book. It's a change of pace from the others. So I think you have to persevere with it, because I think up to this point it's been a lot of bolter porn and good stuff with the Astartes and the early heresy.
Yeah.
I think you have to persevere. Once you've got through the first couple of chapters and you're used to like the change in tone and language, which is more of a symptom of the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Yeah.
Once you get into that, it's a great book, and it's got great moments, as we've talked about, and a lot of intrigue that's worth digging into. So I think initially, when I first started reading it, I was like, Jesus Christ. And then actually I've come to really, really enjoy it.
Yeah. And I mean, I hope that like it's not just me and you doing this and no one watches it, but I hope everyone does watch it, they enjoy it as well, because I really like picking them apart and like working out what's going on and what people are thinking and all that sort of stuff and reactions. I enjoy doing that, and this has been a really good one for it, because like, especially looking at Dahlia, although she's got a bit of the luck of, well, the bad luck, I guess, of being able to just do things Harry Potter style. Like, she was really like clueless as well to a point. Land on this mental planet full of mental robot people, and just cracking on with it. Like getting her point of view, a bit like all the remembrances and stuff. I really enjoy it. This was a good one. Like you say, I want to know more. I want to know more. I want to get these other questions answered that probably we never will. But it does make you read on and hope for it.
Indeed. And like, it drives you to, even like me, like I Google the lore, I'll look things up, I'll be like, what does happen to Dahlia? What does, what is the dragon? And you start having, you go down wormholes, you get to space, you can go into, Reddit and chat groups and stuff like that, and you start having these discussions. And, that's the joy. That is one of the good things about, as I was saying, like with that narrative, where they don't give answers to everything. Everyone can have an opinion, everyone can have a theory, and no one's wrong. As soon as they put definitive actions on it, then you take that imagination out of it, you take that scope out of it. Like, as I said, I could be dead set that the Dragon of Mars is, a Necron shard. You could turn around and say to me, no, actually it's a it's a massive tyrannid synapse creature. It doesn't matter, we're both right and we're both wrong. But if they actually say it's something, then we're done.
Sometimes I like to be spoon fed though.
I know
but like, but I get it. No, it is, but the thing is, unless they suddenly shut down production, like, they can always revisit this stuff. And I mean, they're still doing the Siege of Terror at the minute,
Exactly.
So they can always, when they've done that, they can always backtrack and fill in some blanks.
Yeah, they can go back, they can pick stuff up, and they can go, right, we'll now do, you know, Dahlia and Romu, the buddy comedy that we've all been waiting for.
I mean, that could be quite good. I mean, Romu's the comedian. We found
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and Dahlia's the straight man.
Yeah, without a doubt.
That could be quite interesting. Although they are just standing in a cave for 10,000 years, pretty much. So
That's
maybe
it.
not.
Inventing their own version of chess with pebbles.
Yeah. Right. Well, unless there's any other points to wrap up part 400 of Mechanicum.
Yeah, I have no other tangents to take us on.
Well, so that will lead us into Tales of Heresy, which we're looking forward to, all the short stories. I'm halfway through the second one, and I've enjoyed them both so far. So we'll look forward to seeing you on those ones. But for the time being, I'm in Ceramite. Stick us in Google, and we'll pop up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If you're listening to us, come over to YouTube and have a look at the channel and other bits and pieces we've got on there. And if you're on YouTube, but you want to listen to us on the go, then anywhere you get your podcasts from, you can find us there. We've got a Twitch that needs dusting off. We've got a Patreon that needs looking at, but we'll have a look anyway. But if you are into the hobby, or if you buy your books and you go to Element Games, they do everything at a discounted price anyway. And if you want to just give us a little bit of a help, use our link that's in the description below, at no extra cost to yourself. We'll get a little kickback for sending you, and then any money we get, we'll put back into the channel. And then, as always, it's Glenn versus Shane versus...
Well, you say that. I'm going to quickly give a shout out to, a player called Kovi, Kovi, who has been has come in and has started really challenging the top spots in our Combat Cards clan. So, welcome aboard.
So is he giving you a run for your money, or is he just pegging at your heels?
No, we've traded top spot throughout this current month's season, or whatever we call it. So I think I've over the past day I've built up a bit of daylight, but I wake up in the morning and he's definitely chipped away at it. But we've been back and forth at top spot. So welcome to the clan.
Oh dear. Mechanicum assassin heading your way, Kobe. Anyway, right, that's it. Thank you for joining us. Give us some feedback. Let us know what you think, and we will see you for some Tales of Heresy.
As always, we would like to thank you for listening to our Iron and Ceramite podcast. If you liked us, then you can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and any other good podcast services. Just remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.